Seemingly out of nowhere, some really big news dropped for Overwatch today. DPS and tank heroes will receive a toned-down version of the self-healing passive, which will be live in Season 9. And this news came from part 1 of the director's take, which was called Our Development Values. And this news immediately made a lot of noise, especially on Twitter where #Overwatch is now trending. And as you guys know by now, if Overwatch is trending on Twitter, it's normally because people have a lot of things to say about a new balance change. And that's exactly what's happening right now. A lot of people, including me, have had an immediate negative reaction to this news and have all begun to ask the same question. Why? Why? Who thought this was a good idea? Who thought that something like this was needed? What was the point? So, while it's super easy, like I sort of just showed, to shit on this idea and immediately call it stupid and dumb and ask for it to be removed, I want to go through the director's take and sort of see things from the developer's perspective and try to see what problem they want to fix with something like this, with a change like this, which gives every role a passive healing ability. So to begin, this director's take immediately starts with them talking about development values and how overall they want to improve Overwatch's individual and team-focused gameplay to meet the needs of the core audience, and how this game should always evolve with new systems and features that serve players. And some of these new systems and features that they talk about are things like map voting and the competitive system, which we know will be rehauled and reworked in Season 9. And the third thing they add is a modification to moment-to-moment gameplay. And what really stuck out to me here is how the other two things, map voting and the competitive system, are really concrete and easily understood ideas that they want to work on in the game. When they say modification to moment gameplay, it's very vague in comparison. And that idea of modifying moment-to-moment gameplay is something they really focus on when they talk about how Overwatch is a team-based, hero-based, multiplayer competitive shooter. I'm going to play a quick clip here from Aaron Keller, who's the game director, where he sort of talks about how synergy is required for Overwatch to be at its best.
Together, when every player is utilizing a hero to the best of their ability, and that team is executing a strategy in order to win a match, the game feels really magical. There's really nothing else like it. Now, players aren't always acting in the best accordance or with what's best in mind for their team. And when they're not, sometimes that can be pretty frustrating. And so we're also looking at ways of reducing that frustration and maybe even giving players ways to operate without necessarily always depending on their team.
So as you can see there, Aaron is really focusing on this idea that Overwatch at its core is a hero-based team shooter, but how sometimes, playing as a team isn't always fun when your teammates suck. And it seems like this whole idea of giving these role passives to tank and DPS to heal themselves is born from the idea that sometimes your teammates suck. And it seems like a very conflicting message to send, to say how when Overwatch is at its best, everyone is working at a team. But now we're going to introduce this mechanic where all of a sudden you don't have to do that anymore. It just seems really conflicting. And like for me, it's like if you really want to have fun in Overwatch, you will work to be better as a teammate. If you're playing tank, you will become a better tank. If you're playing DPS, you will become a better DPS, support, better support, and so on. This seems like it's sort of giving people a crutch, an excuse to say, well, I don't have to work better with my team because I can heal myself now. It's super strange. And that's one of the angles that I think they were going with. They want the experience to be better for those who aren't great at playing with a team. And with this being a team-based game, it doesn't make sense for me. And to really nail that point home, there is this quote that I want to bring up from the director's take, where it says, "The reliance on teammates can simultaneously be one of the best and worst attributes of the game." And while this completely makes sense, I think my issue with it is they say this as if Overwatch is the only game where relying on teammates makes the game better and makes the game worse. No, this is for any multiplayer team-based game. This is true. You think of Call of Duty. If you have a teammate who is going 2-11, you're not having fun with them on your team. If you have a Rainbow Six Siege teammate who is 0-8 and not contributing at all and dying first every round, that is not fun. If you're playing Rocket League and your teammate own goals like 4 times, you're not having fun. And the contrasting scenarios where your teammates are great, in every video game, you immediately have a better experience. And it feels like that's where the motivation to get better, to be better as a teammate comes from. And so to do something like this where you just push away from the idea that being a better teammate makes the game better, makes the gameplay experience better, is just super strange. And the second perspective I want to look at this from is from a balancing perspective. When they introduced the idea that both tanks and damage heroes will get this modified, tuned version of support self-healing, they said that this should give non-support players more options in terms of sustaining themselves. which is cool and all. If you didn't already have two very strong, some would say overtuned characters who exist to heal, to do that. That's their entire purpose. The second quote they give is that it should also take some of the pressure off support players to keep everyone alive, since individual players now have more control of their health pool. Players already had control of their health pool in a way. You think of going to health packs, you think of staying out of team fights, you think of using abilities to regain health, whether it's like Hammond with his armor regen, Soldier with his, his healing ability. It just feels like there were already ways for players to have this control of their health pool. And now you're taking this away from support players. People already complain that support players are overpowered and overtuned and they're way better at DPSing than they should be. And now you're going to take away from the one thing that they should be focusing on, which is healing. I just don't understand how you can have support as this very strong role, which in my bias, I will admit it's a very strong powered role. I don't know how you take away one of the core aspects of what they should be in charge of and just give it to DPS and tank players. I'm sure DPS and tank players will be fine with it. They will enjoy managing their own health pools. But it feels like 2 of the 5 players and heroes on any Overwatch team are meant to do this. You're making their job easier when it doesn't necessarily have to be. Overall, I don't enjoy this change. I mean, we haven't even seen it yet, so I can't definitively say that it will be terrible. But purely on paper, I just don't understand it. From one, it moves away from Overwatch's core philosophy, which is it being a team-based game. You are no longer encouraging teamwork. From my perspective, you were moving away from that by introducing this mechanic. And from a more gameplay and balancing perspective, supports are now losing one of the things that they're supposed to be in charge of. That's 2 players on a 5-man team. That's a lot. So I don't understand it. I tried to read through this and understand that they want, the gameplay experience to be a bit better for maybe the lower skill tier where people aren't communicating in voice comms and giving call outs and saying, I need healing when they need healing and I need support whenever, whatever. I can't make it work for me. I can't. Maybe things will be different when it comes out. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe they'll have the numbers in such a way that, supports still have their job of healing and tanks and DPS are able to support themselves. And maybe this will fix issues where tanks are very weak and maybe, I don't know. I have to assume it fixes something because if it doesn't, I will be very confused as to what the whole point of this was. Let me know what you guys think. You guys know by now I respond to almost every comment if I can. Just give me thoughts if I'm right, if I'm wrong, if you had a similar reaction, if you have a different perspective, please let me know, because as of right now and what I'm seeing on Twitter and Reddit and a bunch of Overwatch communities, none of this is making any sense.